Welcome back to FordeeTV. I'm your host, Fordee. So today we are back in After Effects working on part 6 of my beginner series, or After Effects for Beginners series, and today we are talking about effects, baby. I wasn't sure how I was going to tackle effects, because it's a very large subject, and I thought, well, going through each of these effects and explaining them, that's going to take forever. So I thought, you know what, today's course or today's episode would be better suited to explain how to apply certain types of effects, why you would apply them in certain scenarios, etc., and talk about some of the issues you may come across so you can better understand it, and then you can start exploring with the effects, and then maybe in the future, if you guys want, I can do specific videos for specific effects, and that seems like it would be a better idea, huh? So inside After Effects, I have a piece of footage here. I'm going to create a new comp by clicking on the new comp icon. It's set to 1920 by 1080, 30 frames a second, and a 10-second duration. That's fine, huh? I'll click on OK. Right here, I have a piece of footage I uploaded to my IG, my art IG today. Excuse me. It's about some brush holders I've made that are for sale, and we're just going to use that, huh? If I scrub through in the beginning, you're just going to see it's my intro. So I'm going to drag this over twice so I can make sure that there's no text playing. So you see how there's some text right there? That's actually okay. I think it's in the beginning or in the end, so let's just drag it a bit. I just don't want any text in there. Perfect, right? You can see me looking at that brush holder with pride, baby. Those are handmade, huh? Anyway, let's jump into this. As I scrub, I don't see any extra text, which I didn't want that, so that's cool, huh? The first thing let's talk about is make sure your effects and presets are visible here. If they're not, go up to Window and select Effects and Presets. Then the first, anyway, the 3D channel, let's talk about that for 1 second. Let's brush over it, right? And the reason for that is, unfortunately, Adobe has not updated their readability of 3D files since 2015. So if you have newer 3D software and you export in a file format that After Effects will understand, the problem is the object IDs are not going to be picked up. So if you create an object buffer in Cinema 4D, for example, and let's say the scene has 3 spheres, and you set each of those spheres to be a different object ID, then what you can technically do is, for example, select one of these effects. So like, for example, the ID mat, drop it over here, and we can tell it we want to find the object ID of number 4, of number 3, of number whatever, and then whatever effects we apply will only apply to that object ID. So that's super cool. The problem is that Adobe hasn't updated the readability since 2015, so a lot of stuff doesn't work. If I export a video from, or an animation from Cinema 4D, unfortunately my version, it won't work, so I can't even show you it working. Let's move to something that will work, huh? By the way, some of the effects that you're seeing right here, you are not going to see because you don't own them, and I do. So, or maybe you own effects that I don't own, and so some things may be different. Whether you have FX Factory, Boris, Mocha Silhouette, Hawaii Keyer, those things do not come with After Effects. So that's important to note if you're noticing a difference, etc. I'm only going to go over things that come with After Effects today. So blur and sharpen. Let's open that up. There's lots of different blur and sharpen effects that we can use. We're just gonna use Gaussian blur. However, fast blur is pretty awesome. It works pretty quickly, etc. I'm gonna click on Gaussian blur, drag it over here. I could drag it onto my comp here, or I could drag it onto the brush holder right here. Right? When I do that, it should automatically open my effects controls for this, and you'll say, hey, wait a second, nothing happened, right? Well, nothing happened because some effects, when they are applied at a 0 state or a 0 value. If we crank up the blurriness right here, boom, now it becomes super blurry. Real quick, what I was thinking to show you is that a lot of times you're going to have, maybe you have an interview and you want to blur out the person's face. Well, you can do that no problem. Obviously, when we crank this up, whatever, to some big number, my face is blurred out even more, huh? But the problem is, let me turn this off, is everything is blurred. So if we just want to blur my face, we're going to have to go ahead and apply a mask. Up here in our tools, you're going to come over here. You see that I have ellipse tool selected. If you're on the rectangle tool or a different tool, click and hold, and then select the ellipse tool. I can then click and drag and I can drag a mask over my face just to show my face. If I click on the space bar while my mouse button is still depressed, I can make sure that I reposition this mask. When I let go, boom, that's awesome, but what's going on, all right? So if I click on the effect to apply it, it's blurring just my face, but what about the rest of the footage? In order to fix that, what we can do is come down to the layer, press Command D while it's highlighted, it's gonna duplicate it, huh? On the bottom layer, we can do two things. Number one, we can delete the effect, right? Number two, we can delete the mask. And when we do that, we have, let me turn off the visibility here, we have one layer with nothing, and we've duplicated on the layer above, it has the mask, when I turn on the visibility, and it has an effect applied, right? So this way that we can choose different portions of our video that we want to affect in different ways, right? Some effects maybe even have a mask built in. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn off these audio switches here because this has audio. If I press play, we don't need to listen to the audio. Of course, it will slow things down, etc. But you're saying, wait a second, when you push play, what if your head moves, right? My head moved right here. It's outside of this. Well, we could do a couple things. Number one, we could animate the mask positions ourselves, or we can use some type of tracking. This video is not going to be about tracking. I think that's a little bit more advanced. We can do some videos on that in the future, but I'm going to quickly show you two options. I'm going to close the effects and presets right here. If you don't see tracker here, go to Window, find tracker, boom, and it should appear. One of the things you'll notice is you have more than one option. We can track our camera, we can stabilize our footage, etc. But we don't want to use these options. In order to see the option that we want to use, we're going to have to open up this layer's mask and select the mask. As soon as we do, you'll notice the tracker changes. We have a bunch of options for the method. If in this particular scenario, if I want to track this, probably face tracking outline or detailed features will be the best scenario. However, it will change the mask shape. If I don't want to change the mask shape, then maybe position, scale, rotation, and skew. And you'll say, why would you use any of the other ones, right? Well, if you select one of the, position will be the easiest, the least CPU intensive, whereas position, scale, rotation, and skew is the most CPU intensive, meaning it will take longer, right? But let's use tracking outline only, and what we want to do is we want to track forward because I'm at the start of it, frame 0, etc. So tracking backwards is not going to work. These first two buttons are about tracking backwards. The next two are about tracking forward. So this is track forward from now until the end of the composition, and this is frame by frame. We're just going to select this one. When I do that, you'll notice that the mask changes, you know, to fit the outline of my face, huh? So we're just going to do it for a second. I'm going to press a space bar to stop it, and you'll notice all these keyframes under the mask shape or mask path, right? So now you'll notice as we scrub right here, it follows the shape of my face. Maybe one of the things you're saying is, well, it falls too closely. Maybe what if we want the blur to go a little bit outside there? All we have to do is come over here to mask expansion and crank up the mask expansion, right? And what that's doing is making the mask larger than what this current mask path is, right? So, okay, that's pretty cool. Of course, we can crank this up even more, whatever. Now you don't know it's me. Of course, if you heard the audio or if you're looking at the tattoos, of course you know it's me. Anyway, we can apply other things, huh? So let's say we didn't want to use Gaussian blur. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it, press delete. We still have this tracking data here, so that's fine. We'll come over here to effects and presets. I'm going to click the twirly button here. And of course, we can search for things just as we can browse for them, right? So if I start to type in mosaic, we'll see under stylize, we have mosaic here. I'll drop it in, and you'll notice that this puts these basically square mosaics where the mask is. In fact, let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to cancel that out. I'm going to delete the mosaic here, and I'm going to hide this layer. Huh? I'm just going to work on the layer below, which has everything. It has no mask, and we're going to drop the mosaic on it, right? Now, when I have this mosaic here, one thing, the reason I wanted to apply this is, of course, we could just do it to my face, right? And we can change how many blocks there are. If we crank this up, then it becomes more... Let's put it at 100 by 100, right? It becomes more realistic the larger this number is. So if we put it 50, 50. Anyways, the point of this is not necessarily to go over all the effects. Remember that, huh? But whenever I see a chance to explain something, I'm going to do it. The whole purpose of this is this yellow check mark. What does that mean? What it's telling us, if we look over here in the effects and presets, it says 16 right next to the effect. That means that this is a 16-bit effect. The explanation mark says we are working in a project in a different color space than that effect is. If we click on these arrows right here, select project, we'll notice that the comp is in 32 bits per channel color space, right? Or float. We can click there and we can change this. However, let's say we don't want to work in 16-bit, we want to work in 32-bit. We can come back over here to effects and controls and we can start typing in our effects HDR Compander. And if we bring this over here, what we can do is we can say we want to compress the range, because right now we're working in 32 bits per channel. If we compress the range, then we will be able to work in the 16-bit, and then we can drop the HDR Compander below and say expand range. And now what this is going to do is give us more reliable results. We don't have to add these HDR companders when we're working in an effect that gives us the warning sign. That warning sign is just saying, hey, you might not get the results that you expect because you're working in a different color space than the effect was designed to be used in. However, by using this HDR compander, you should get more, your results should be more reliable, right? Now, again, you don't have to do it. And so there we go. This is the mosaic effect. This is applying it on a particular layer. So, looking at my notes, what's next? I'm going to go ahead and delete these effects with this one selected, holding shift on my keyboard, clicking on the top one, pressing delete. Now we have this layer and it's all that's deleted. I'm going to select the layer above, press delete on my keyboard, and now we just have this piece of footage that we had from the beginning. Let's go over here. We'll click on the X here to get rid of what I typed, and we're going to find color correction. I'll click on the arrow here, and you're going to see, wow, there is a lot of color correction that is included with After Effects, right? So let's talk about the first one. I'm going to click and drag curves over here, and when I drag that over, we see curves. Now, curves are a way that we can make changes to our colors. First, the channel, RGB, means we are affecting everything. Down here in the bottom left, this is your shadows. Up here on the top right are your highlights. If we click right here and we drag down, this will darken everything, right? If we drag up, it will lighten everything. And of course, you would never do that, right? However, let's say you just wanted to brighten a little bit. Maybe that. We can see a before and after by clicking on this toggle here, right? If you have a point here selected, you can press the, whoops, I'm going to press Apple Z. Let's make sure I have that point selected. And it's not letting me just delete that point, huh? All right, so I don't know why it wasn't letting me delete that point, but the point of this, usually when you use curves, probably you are looking to add a contrast curve, right? So if I go ahead and take this point right here and I drag this right here, what I'm saying is down here in the shadows, I want you to get darker, huh? Because coming down is darker, going up is lighter. Up here in the highlights, if I click and drag here, what I've done is increase the brightness of the highlights. And you'll notice what this has done is increase the contrast dramatically. If I click on the effects button right here, you're going to see quite a difference. And maybe this is just too much, huh? Now, the first thing that you should be aware of is usually you would not apply, well, depending on the scenario, you may not apply the curves color correction layer right here, right? If I click on this and I delete it, probably what you would do is go up to layer, say new, and then say adjustment layer. And what adjustment layer is an adjustment layer is a placeholder for effects, usually color correction, huh? And so, for example, if I drag this curves onto the top of the adjustment layer and I make the contrast curve, the S curve, and I do that here, this is going to apply to every layer below the adjustment layer, right? And I could come over here and I can press enter and I could say curves, you know, or I could say contrast S curve, for example. And then that lets me know that that's what I'm doing on this layer, and it's applying to all the layers below. So if I had another layer below here, it would apply this S curve to that as well. So, let's do that. In fact, I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to draw a mask over my face. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to type in blur. And then I'm going to find the Gaussian blur. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it here. I'm going to crank this up to 100. Boom. And here we have this contrast S curve being applied just to both of the layers below. Let's go ahead, let's go back to the color correction. I'll click on this arrow right here. I'm going to come down and let's talk about tint and tritone. Tint is when you want to remap your white and black values. So if I go over here and I drag this to the contrast S curve, right? And the reason I'm doing that is to show you if we move where this is located, it's going to affect like only the bottom layer, huh? So if I go ahead and drag this down and now it's between the two, notice that the stuff on this adjustment layer is only affecting the layers below. So the layer above, it is not affecting it. There's no contrast curve, there's no tint that's remapping the black and white values, etc., right? So if I go ahead and drag this back on top of it, cool. What we can do here is if we want our black to be blue, for example, right? And we want our white to be, I don't know, purple. Now we've remapped our tones like this. And obviously this is not in certain effects you may use this, but tint is used, okay? God, my brain, huh? And even though I have sleep, it's slow to bounce back. Tritone is the same thing as tint, except it remaps your midtones also. So you can keep your highlights and your shadows both white and black and just tint your image. So for example, let's say I wanted this to be green, right? Because FordeeTV, green, baby. So now our image is like we've put a color filter on front of our camera and boom, everything is green. So, okay, now we've seen how to apply effects and use masks to make sure that that effect is only applied to a certain portion of a clip. We've also seen how we can track that mask so it stays with our face, etc. If it's a face, it could be something else, huh? We've also seen that if we're going to apply color correction, probably we're going to apply it to an adjustment layer. And yeah, let's talk about a couple other things and then we'll call the video good. So I'm going to delete this adjustment layer here by selecting it, pressing delete on my keyboard. And now I have these two layers. In fact, I'll hide the one that has the blur of my face and I'll just work on the bottom one. I don't know if we need to delete it yet. In fact, yeah, I guess we can, huh? So some effects, when they are applied, they take over that layer. Right? So for example, if I right click and say new and select solid, a solid can be used for a lot of things. Huh? It can be used because you want to use this as a full red solid for a background or whatever. Of course, we can change the size here because maybe we're not using this for a background. Maybe we're using this to cover my face, right? Instead of blurring my face, we cover my face with red. I don't know, huh? Or maybe you're using this to go here, and we have it behind the logo, and this is part of a lower third, or. Anyway, but also what you can use, I'm going to press Apple Z a few times to get back to being full, is a solid could be used as a placeholder for an effect. So if we come over here and we start typing in fractal noise, right? Now this is a beast of a plugin, huh? Going over this will take some time. Once we drag this over here to our effect and controls, let me press Apple Z to undo. Really, because we dragged it here because we had the layer selected. It's the same thing as dropping it on the layer here, or dropping it on itself in the composition. And now what we've got going on right now is that red layer is gone, or that red solid is gone. It's not gone though, it's still there, but the effect now exists on that solid, and therefore the solid is basically a placeholder, just like an adjustment layer would be for a color correction. So obviously there's lots of different effects here. This can be used to create background. I mean, it's a beast of a plugin, huh? In fact, we can even change our mode right here to overlay so you can see below. We can animate the evolution so that fractal noise animates. Maybe this is a dream sequence or something like that. Of course, there's different options. We don't need to be in basic, right? We can say dynamic twist, and there, whoa, now it's looking crazy, right? I'm going to go ahead and hide this, and when I do, you see the solid, right? So if we want to hide that, what we should do is click in the visibility icon here. If we select the brush holder and we come over here and we delete this, we're going to look for the distort category. In the distort category, there is something called turbulent displace. Turbulent displace, if we drop this on the brush holder layer, basically displaces things, right? You could use this to create a portal, for example, using the fractal noise with the turbulent displace and a few other plugins. You can make a cool looking portal, for example. Now we can change things here, right? We can change the amount. The more we turn this up, the more things are going to be displaced. Of course, all this can be animated, right? So we can also animate the evolution. And now this looks like a funhouse mirror kind of effect. So if we turn this on, now maybe this is a dream sequence where I'm like, whoa, and then you add audio. Oof, my muscles look good in some, in some of the evolution, right? Hey, stay there. Anyways, so as you can see, certain effects you're going to apply directly to the clip. Certain effects are going to be applied to solids because they need a layer to exist on. And if, for example, let's click on this red solid. If we applied the fractal noise to the brush holder layer, then you wouldn't see that footage anymore. So there's no reason to apply it to footage because, of course, there's calculations there, etc. We would apply it to a solid, and then it doesn't have to be changing the blend mode. It could be used to create a background or many, many other things. You can apply effects to adjustment layers. When you do that, any layer below that adjustment layer is going to be affected. If you want to apply an effect to only affect a certain area, what if we just wanted this turbulence displace to affect one side of the image? Let's say that actually we wanted to just do this dreamy side on one side. What we can do is come over here to our mask, select the rectangle mask tool. If I click and drag and bring this to about here, cool. And you're saying, well, wait a second, this mask is only affecting our fractal noise. If we wanted to affect the layer below, we can click on this mask, press Command C, select the brush holder layer, and press Command V. Now what ended up happening is it applied the turbulence displace to this layer only where the mask is. But in order to show this with nothing, we're going to have to duplicate the brush holder layer by pressing Command D on our keyboard, selecting the brush holder layer, and deleting turbulent displace, pressing M on our keyboard to reveal the mask, selecting the mask, and pressing delete. So now I have half of this footage that's normal, nothing's going on. If I press play, let's make sure the audio is off. It is. And it's going to build around preview. We'll give it a few seconds. And one of the things that you're noticing is nothing is being animated, and that's because we didn't animate it. If I select this and I come over here and I set the evolution to 0, set this to 0, then I go ahead and click on the stopwatch. I move forward in time, maybe here to 2 seconds, and we're going to say three full circular rotations. Then if we watch this, this is what's happening. I'll press spacebar. And maybe that's too much. Well, anyways, for sure it's too much. But it looks something like this. And so, obviously, I don't know if you would ever do something exactly like this, but the point is that you can use masks to apply effects to just certain parts of your layer. These masks can be drawn in with the pen tool. They can be primitive shapes, etc. Guys, I hope that you like this tutorial. I know it's been a little bit. I'm finally getting enough sleep where I feel I can be coherent enough to make tutorials. So I'm back. I've got a lot of things planned. I think we have 1 or 2 more videos in this After Effects for Beginners series, and then we're going to call it done. And then I'd like to get back into some Cinema 4D stuff, some animation stuff. I have some reviews of some cool products that I have too, etc., etc. Guys, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe. Share the video with your friends, yo. It would mean the world to me. Until next time, I'm out.